Welcome everyone to Tom's Take, episode 3. It's our Green Acre movie review show, and I feel like we review movies that matter. Today we're going to be looking at 3 films: Gather, Rumble, Indians That Rock the World, and Songs My Brother Taught Me. One of the through lines, obviously, through all 3 films is it's centered on the Native American community and the Native American experience. So with that, why don't we get right into the first film, and maybe you could give us a synopsis of that film.
The movie focuses on 4 different individuals who are trying to, in their own ways, restore Native American food culture to their local communities. One is a chef in New Mexico who's actually opening up a restaurant that is near an Apache reservation and trying to restore some of the food that was once common to the Apache people and has in many ways been lost, to try to restore that and try to restore healthy food to the community. Also, there's a woman who's Apache trying to do the same thing, trying to restore pre-colonial foods to the Apache diet. Another individual is a young woman who's a Cheyenne River Sioux who's pursuing a degree at college level in biology to help restore buffalo to the native diet and the importance that once held, and also the health benefits of eating buffalo. There's another individual young man who's trying to bring back salmon to the Northwest to try, not only has the salmon been depleted, but also because of things like dams in particular, a lot of the spawning grounds have been lost. So it's a combination of trying to bring back the salmon and also trying to restore the rivers to where they once were.
I'm curious in Gather if there was something that just kind of like blew your mind as you heard it.
Yeah. How much of food around the world has its roots in Indigenous American culture. So the irony is that the rest of the world is eating because of the cultivation that took place millennia ago. A lot of the people who helped create it are now in areas of food insecurity, that they're in areas that they're getting they're on a nutritionally poor diet, different government programs, government food that was supplied frequently low in nutrition and without any sort of cultural ties. I think also the way the food had once and hopefully again will tie people to the earth, that it was not providing sustenance, but also that there was a direct connection between you and the food that you're eating, that there was a minimal amount of environmental disruption going on compared to today, what's happening today, that there was more of a balance at one time.
Well, why don't we move on to Rumble, Indians That Rocked the World, and maybe you can give a synopsis on that for us.
This is a 2017 Canadian production produced by Stevie Salas, who is a legendary rock guitarist and also of Apache background. And it was on a subject which is kind of rarely looked at, and that was the Native American influence in American popular music. One of the first musical forms that focuses on is the blues in Southeast United States, and how much of that blues, some of the sounds came from Native American music. And then it takes that premise and goes throughout history in American music, right up to like heavy metal or current music, and you can see the argument where not only some of the style, but also particularly some of the beat, the drumming came through very solid.
I'll ask you the same question for this as I did with Gather, maybe slightly differently. Was there an aha moment for you in the film, or something that really struck you in particular as you watched it?
There was a particular scene where she was playing side by side Native American chants, some of the early like Charlie Patton blues, and it was it was pretty telling when you heard those records. Just she was putting a needle on the different records, and you could hear side by side the similarities. Sometimes you can read about something like that, but you have to, when you actually hear it, you can see the very strong argument that the original culture here didn't vanish and was definitely in many ways absorbed into the current culture.
Before watching this film, it felt like all rock and roll was connected to the blues, and the blues was a strictly an African American creation. But to know that there was a linkage to Native American, I found to be amazing and very powerful.
Yeah.
Seeing the Indians at Carnival was getting to know who I was. That was the only time that black men could put on feathers. When the African party rhythms and the Native American folk on the floor came together, that was the beginning of what became American music.
The last one is a feature film called Songs My Brother Taught Me. Maybe you could walk us through what this film is about.
Sure. This also is the first film by director Chloe Zhao, who last year won an Academy Award for Best Director and was the first woman of color to win that award. For this movie, she actually did live on the Pine Ridge Reservation for 3 years, getting to really be part of the culture and getting really to know the people. And it has almost a documentary feel, because one of the main characters, who's named Johnny in the movie, was performed by a young man, is actually 80% of the character was who he was. He is from that reservation himself. And it's about his relationship with his sister, his young sister. He's a high school senior about to graduate, and he's thinking about leaving the reservation for Los Angeles with his girlfriend. But he has this very strong bond with his little sister. What does he do? Is he going to leave the reservation, leave his sister behind? Living on a reservation, there are a lot of social problems. There's alcoholism, which is depicted in the movie. In fact, he's even has a side business of selling illegal alcohol. So he has his character is conflicted in many ways. It really shows the bonds that people have in under hardship.
The whole movie packs an emotional punch.
Yeah.
But I'm curious for you, was there any scene that
Yeah, I think maybe not a particular scene, but I think the chemistry between the brother and sister is so realistic and strong. The relationship one has with a sibling one is close to, where there's just this love between siblings.
I too was very moved by their bond and connection. I thought she was very strong.
Yeah, like you said, emotionally too. She's the real emotional heart of it. I mean, what really draws you into it emotionally? Because I mean, he's a compelling character, obviously, but I think she's the one that really your heart goes out to. I could just mention the fact that there is a reference to her being a seventh generation that plays into a famous prophecy by Crazy Horse, who was killed in the Wounded Knee Massacre, which took place at the Pine Ridge Reservation in 1890. And he had a prophecy that there would be, in 7 generations, there would be a renewal of Native culture, a reawakening. And so there is that aspect of the movie too, is how that plays into the fact that she is of the 7th generation.
Crazy Horse said everything all seemed to have ended at Wounded Knee, but it will all begin again with the 7th generation, and that's you.
Okay, well, friends, we don't really review movies that we're not recommending. So, so maybe we can wrap up here, just going through each film. So Tom, I don't know if you want to start with Gather, just give us a little pitch why folks should watch it.
For several reasons. Obviously, the understanding the history of food and native culture, the attempts to restore food and native cultures, but also just to be conscious of food that you eat, how it's delivered, that sometimes we just take it for granted. I think that's probably one of the things that's important about a movie like that, to make you just conscious of food, its importance in culture and health, and also the environment.
And what about Rumble? Besides, it's just a fun.
Yeah, Rumble is it's music, but throughout history, culture defines itself by music, and music represents that culture. So it's like language; it's a living part of a culture, because that music represents many lives that have gone into that music. It's a living thing, just like food. There's a story behind music too.
And what about songs, my brother? Tom?
Okay, yeah, sure. I think it's valuable in many ways, but obviously a glimpse into reservation life, which is rarely looked at, and looked at in a very realistic, non-sensational kind of way, in a touching way. But about what it's like to live there, and the toll it can take, but also the ties that bind people in a culture.
Well, Tom, thank you. I think this has been enlightening, and thank you for these suggestions and discussing these films with us.
Right. Thank you, Frank.
See you next time.
Okay, thanks.
Bye, everybody.